Welcome to the mysterious Book Emporium. Garahel has just delivered the orders to put all of the Griffin under his sister's command through the joining. Isia is heartbroken and numb, but can this really give them the edge they need to defeat the Fourth Blight? Why don't you take a seat as we finish off Last Flight by Liane Merciel, chapters 19 through 25. Chapter 19. 520 Exalted. As soon as Garahel left, Isia went to the Griffin roosts, tears burning in her eyes. She thinks on all the things she loves about Griffins and how the joining will take all of that away. The Blight just takes too much. But despite hating everything about it, all the people it would save does make the horror worth it. 10 Griffins to save thousands? Is that not worth it? She tries not to look into their eyes as she puts each of them through the joining, none of them ever resisting until it was too late. She cries and rages just as the joined Griffins do. At the end, she refuses to put Ravas through the joining and Lismay's Griffin Hunter. But as she leaves, she notices that Lismay has been watching her. She wears no wig today, but instead has painted her scalp with copper-painted curls that shines in the sun. Lismay asks Isia why she would pass over her hunter, and Isia responds that Lismay is her friend, and she thought Lismay wouldn't want that for her Griffin. Lismay thinks for a moment, watching an injured Griffin move like it was young again. Eventually, she tells Isia to do the same to Hunter. She tells her that she won't let sentimentality be the reason the mission fails. At dawn, the Griffins and their Aravels leave Fortress Hain for Kirkwall. Isia is controlling 2 Griffins using blood magic as they will attack any darkspawn in sight, and because they do not have a strong connection to any rider. All the Griffins who have taken the joining have a persistent cough which has irritated the lining of their nasal cavities so much that each snort comes with a fine mist of blood. As they travel to Kirkwall, the Griffins under her control spot tainted wildlife, and they strain against her control to attack them, their will so strong that she bites her tongue. Isia, struggling to hold them back, bit her tongue until she tasted blood. It felt wrong in her mouth, thicker than it should have been, colder, a viscous poison jelly of corruption. She spat. It was blood, only blood. Isia saw it go red into the wind, but the taste and the feel of the wrongness of it lingered, long after the deer had vanished behind them and the Griffin's anger had subsided back to dull embers. As they close in on the city-state, she sees that the mages and wardens of Kirkwall have made the best safe landing spot that they could, continuing to fight the tide of darkspawn back. Unfortunately, that means that there is a very narrow strip of safety to land through. She signals for the riders to land, and they do so, except for Lismay. As she begins to land with her Griffin, Hunter gets a little too close to the spawn and he breaks her command, attacking them. Down he goes, along with the string of Aravels he carried, and Lismay. Isia tries to ignore the screams of her friend as she has to land her own Griffin. But Lismay is gone. Safe behind the walls now, Isia feels a sense of pride for Ravas for being able to handle the fight on her own, as Isia had to control 2 other Griffins with her blood magic. Refugees begin to pour into the Aravels with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and when the Griffins begin their flight again, the last caravan drops lyrium bombs in its wake. Kaelin, sitting behind Isia, is surprised at how well this has all worked out. They can do this. Isia is more pessimistic, saying that it has taken a lot out of her to possess the Griffins. This might be harder than they thought. Quietly, Kaelin tells her that he can take them, but the only thing she can think of is that this is what the demons of the Fade have been telling her too. Chapter 20. 942 Dragon. Valya pauses on her way out of the library to talk to Seika, who is sitting on the floor reading about Darkspawn. It's past midnight and the 2 seem to be the only ones awake at this hour. She questions why he stays up so late to read, and Seika reveals that he really wants to be a Grey Warden, and a good one. It's important to him to serve a group that is for all people in Thedas, to be a part of something that strives to unite people and remember their better natures. Valya reminds him that the Grey Wardens have done really terrible things, but he says that all organizations have. But they have tried to do good, and that's all that matters. Valya ponders this and then asks Seika if he remembers telling her that they needed to find something useful for the Wardens to keep them. He does. She goes on to say that she may have found something, but she isn't sure if the Wardens should have it or not. Seika refrains from asking what she means, telling her that the best way to figure out if they deserve whatever it is to figure out if they are likely to repeat their mistakes that they made with whatever it was in the first place. Valya finds Caranel during his daily training and asks if he knows how to find the Red Bride's grave. He is confused, and Valya says that she needs to find it, and that he was said to have been there. Caranel is quiet, but says that she wasn't there. He describes the horrors that he saw. Walking corpses, he and the other wardens he were with were ambushed, and many of his friends are still there. Anger and guilt tighten his shoulders. Valya says that now that they know what to expect, they have a better chance, but he is still wary. Finally, she tells him that something important is there, and that she needs his help to retrieve it. But she doesn't want to tell the wardens, because in part she doesn't know if anything is actually there, but also because she doesn't trust them yet. But she can't tell Karanal what it is they're looking for, but she will tell him when they get out of Weishaupt. Chapter 21. 524 Exalted. It was after saving the people of Starkhaven that Isia's hair started to fall out. She had begun wearing hoods and scarves to hide the worsening corruption from the others, and her voice began to sound more hoarse. The next few battles were a blur for her, a blur of allies gained and lost by various means. Amadis and Garahel said that they were winning the war, but others said differently. While they had gained a lot of ground in the Free Marshes, they were losing grounds in Orlais, the Anderfels, and the Tevinter Imperium. While they had gained a lot of important allies, the most important ones were the Outcasts, a group of castless dwarves called the Stone's Bastards, a group of runaway Tevinter slaves called the Masterless, a group of apostates called the Broken Circle. All of these groups, while helping stop the Blight, held their allegiance to no nation or even the Grey Wardens, but to Garahel himself. Isia was awed by how her brother had gathered so many. He inspired them. It was that simple and that complex. He was an elf, the abandoned child of nameless parents in a poor and dirty alienage, and he was the hero who had saved Hosburg, helped the people of Kirkwall and Cumberland find safety in the retreat, and brought a combined army of unlikely allies to drive the Darkspawn back from Starkhaven. Some of those things, Isia thought, had been hers, originally, but she had given them gladly to her brother, because Garahel could do more with the glory than she could, especially now, with the slow death of Darkspawn corruption transforming her into a monster. After the joining of the Griffins of Fortress Hayne, there had been more requests by the Wardens to join a select number of weakened Griffins, those who could no longer fight for whatever reason. In the beginning, she had objected, but her objections were always overruled, so she had given up. At this point, she wasn't sure if it was blood magic that accelerated her corruption or her despair. She had already looked like she was serving the Wardens 20 years longer than her own brother. But, to her, all of this horror became the price of ending the Blight. It was a promise that one day this nightmare would end. One evening, while planning, Garahel says to his military leaders that they have a chance to end this. They have pushed the Darkspawn far enough that they could kill the Archdemon. Isia asks what his idea is, and he explains that they can strike at the ruined Antiva, the heart of the Archdemon's territory. The Archdemon will then have to appear and defend its land. The Griffin Riders will then lead the strike against the Archdemon while armed forces take out the Horde. An Orlesian leader and Amadis volunteer to go. And Garahel also selects his group of outcasts to join in on the battle. As Isia notes, he is only taking those who have nothing else to lose, and those who have the most to gain by defeating the Blight. Another warden questions Garahel's use of Griffins, saying that they will tire too fast as they are not close to Antiva. But Garahel responds by saying that they will use the joined Griffins. The other warden calls him mad that they cannot be controlled in battle, but Garahel tells him that he trusts his sister. Isia thinks for a moment that perhaps this will be the last horror, so she agrees that they will be controlled. Night had fallen in the camp, and Isia found herself restless. Rivas, who'd never liked sleeping in crowds, had gone to roost elsewhere, so she finds herself in front of Kaelin's tent. I thought a little pious reading might settle my nerves, or bore me to sleep, either way. It's a holy book? That doesn't seem like you. I thought we agreed years ago that you were well past the point of prayers. We did, but not everyone knows that. Oh, it's a gift? Isia looked at the book with renewed curiosity. Who would give you a book of prayers? Must not know you very well. No, not really. Kaelin closed the book and tucked it behind his bedroll out of view. Isia caught a note of subdued hurt in his voice. She lifted a hand in apology. I didn't mean... I know. Truly, it doesn't matter. I take no offense. And you're right, she doesn't know me very well. Who gave you the book? Isia asked. The mother of one of my victims. He goes on to explain that he had killed a child who was in line to inherit a lot of money, and he made it look like an accident. The victim's mother had worn the same perfume as Kaelin's mother, so he had grown soft. He tried to help her past her grief, and she found comfort in his company. She had heard that he was fighting the Blight and had sent this book along. She was in no threat of the Blight, and he hopes that she never will. Isia tells him that she won't be, and thanks him. When he questions what for, she tells him for reminding her why tomorrow matters. Then she leaves. Chapter 22. 524 Exalted. The Grey Wardens had assembled at dawn with 50 Griffin riders and Garahel riding at the head. Isia stayed in the back, controlling 8 joined Griffins, while 2 other Grey Warden blood mages controlled 3 each. They fly out to Antiva and begin attacking the Horde, dropping bombs so expensive Isia thinks on how they won't have another chance to try this again. So it better work. But it does, and the Archdemon comes out to attack. The Griffin riders and the Archdemon fight, with many dying. Eventually, a few of the Griffins who were joined are loosed on the Archdemon and severely damage it. And the Archdemon is able to trick the riders, but a few still make it out alive. Eventually, it retreats back to Rialto Bay, resting on a graveyard of a dozen ships. Isia notes that, for once, the old god looks like something that could die. But at this point, only 3 riders remain, a young recruit, Garahel, and Isia. Garahel calls for the others to stay back. With the ship masts in the air, there's only room for one to attack the Archdemon. I have to. He was already passing her, pushed so close by the ridging that their griffin's wings feathers touched, white over black, black over white. Garahel smiled at her, back over his shoulder. He'd lost his helmet somewhere over Aisley, and his golden hair flew loose in the mist-choked wind. Give my love to Amatis, and my weapons to the Wardens, he said. And Isia, be kind to yourself. Then Crookytail beat his brindled white wings, and Elf and Griffin swept towards the waiting dragon. Isia watches as Crookytail and Garahel fight the Archdemon. Finally, Crookytail dives into Archdemon's head, and Isia watches in horror as the Archdemon bites into him. But Garahel was able to jump onto its head, and only a moment later she watches as her beloved brother rises up his curved knife and plunges it into the Archdemon's skull. There was a moment of silence. She saw her brother mouth words she couldn't make out, and then the blast hits, sending Isia and Ravas flying to stay out of the wind splinters raining towards them. But then, it was gone. It was over. The Archdemon had sunk into the bay while her brother's body had washed ashore on the land he had saved. They'd won. The blight is over. Chapter 23. 524 Exalted. They gave Garahel a hero's funeral. The most powerful in all of Thedas had come to give their thanks, but Isia was alone in her grief. While she mourned her brother, the whole world rejoiced that the blight had been defeated. Even Amatis had duties to guide her through her pain. But Isia, what did she have left? She would have to answer the calling soon, but while that once filled her with dread, it was a welcome thought now. Soon, she thinks as she watches her brother's pyre being lit. Soon. A month later, she found herself flying to Weishaupt. She had gotten word that something was wrong with the Griffins and they wanted her help. What she had found when she got there was shocking. The roosts were almost empty. The warden in charge of the Griffins tells her that they have been killing each other. He takes her to watch as 2 Griffins were currently fighting in the sky, blood splattered on the ground. As far as the Griffin Master can tell, they have really no reason to be fighting. He isn't sure of what to do. On a hunch, Isia asked to examine a Griffin, one that has never been to Fortress Hain. The Griffin Master takes her to the oldest Griffin they have, named Tusk. He has been kept away from the others as he was so old he had lost his sight and hearing. As Isia gets close, she notices that he is sick as well, with dried blood surrounding his nostrils. His skin has started to turn purplish in some places. It looked like darkspawn corruption. But could it really? Making sure the Griffin Master could not see, she pricks Tusk's foot to enter his mind with blood magic. Isia recoiled from the shock of it. She knew she'd never touched Tusk's mind before, had never put him through the joining or forced him to swallow Archdemon's blood. Yet the anger in him was more caustic than anything she'd ever felt in Shrikes or any others she altered. And as much as she had hoped to deny it, the hatred and the taint in Tusk was linked to the magic she spun over the others. It wasn't the same, but it wasn't wholly different either. The shadows and contours of her original work were there, barely discernible under the red veil of fury that clouded Tusk's mind. It had changed, grown into something different and newly warped, as a bear's cairn differs from the hurlock that might have spawned it. But she could not doubt its origins. How could this happen? Yes, she'd bent the other Griffins' minds to think of their joining as a disease, and yes, they had coughed and sneezed up blood, but it wasn't a disease, what she'd done. That had only been a trick to make them accept transformation. Hadn't it? She asked the Griffin Master if Tusk has ever been at Starkhaven, or any of the battles, but he denies it, saying that Tusk was actually decommissioned before the Blight had began. but he has had a little contact with Griffins who had been in battles. But he has been in confinement for at least 3 years now. Isia's mind whirls. This disease, whatever it was, has been within Tusk for 3 years. How many more are infected? As she leaves, she tells the Griffin Master that there is nothing to be done for these Griffins, but she will look for more information as to what is happening. 3 months later, Isia begins hearing orders from the Firstborn to kill any and all Griffins infected with this strange illness. She had searched all over for answers, even to Vinter, but found no explanation or cure for what she had done. Her only choice left was her last one, Kalen. He had been living in Antia, helping his homeland recover from the blight. When Isia landed there, things still looked wrecked, but there were signs of recovery. She finds him by the sea, using magic to clear out some of the wreckage. Isia asks for a private room, so they head up to one in a nearby inn. And finally, Isia tells him what is going on with the Griffins, and that's all her fault, and she needs his help to figure out what to do. Kalen thinks for a moment, but tells her that he won't help. The Chantry has turned a blind eye on mages that helped during the Blight, and him using any blood magic will ruin all of that. The two argue about blood magic, with Kalen stating that if blood magic got them into this mess, how could blood magic get them out of it? Seeing how hurt she looks, he apologizes, but she fumbles for the door, saying that there is absolutely no hope or answers. The Griffins will all die because of her. Before she goes, he tells her that she shouldn't be looking for answers anywhere else. Look at all she has done. She has done the impossible 100 times. If anyone in the world can find a way to save the Griffins, it's her. Chapter 24. 524 Exalted. Amada tells Isia that she had locked up her Griffin, Smoke. She has been in Starkhaven helping recovery, and her mercenary groups acting like new royal guards. Amada tells her that she isn't sure if Smoke even recognized her anymore. She has killed one stable boy and injured another. She doesn't want to kill her, as it would look bad on her politically for killing a present from the Grey Wardens, but also because it was the last and best gift she had received from Garahel. Finally, she asks Isia what she is doing here. "I'm dying." Isia said it without emotion. She didn't have much emotion about that anymore. It was a fact of her existence, as unremarkable as the sun setting in the west. "I wanted to make an attempt at correcting the mistakes of my life before it ends." The dark-haired woman turned to regard her, a flicker of curiosity in her tear-puffed eyes. "Your mistakes?" "They say it's a plague that comes over the Griffins, a darkspawn sickness from the blight, like the affliction of the Bear's Carn." Isia shrugged. "That's one way of looking at it. You have another?" "I fear that the Grey Wardens killed them. More exactly, that I did, under the First Warden's orders. It was the joining ritual, I think, its repercussions. None of us knew this would be the result when we started down this road, but our lack of intention changes nothing. This is what we did, and this is what it's done. We've killed them." Amadas asks how she can fix this mistake. Isia starts off by saying that she can't help Smoke, but she can help her eggs, which are fathered by Crookitail. She can't take the blight from the adult Griffins. Their corruption's too complex to drain out. But in young ones, she would be able to take out the corruption and take it for herself. Amadas questions this. After they hatch, won't they catch it again? But Isia says that she plans to hide them, putting a spell upon them so that they are safe and sound for years to come, and hopefully find a place and time where they can grow healthy, found by some person. When Amadas questions how she'll make sure that they find the right person, Isia says that she really can't guarantee that, but she will make sure it will pass to someone who understands how fleeting freedom can be and who can honor the spirit of the Griffins. Amadas is silent for a bit, saying that Smoke had been her strength, something from Garahel, and now Isia is telling her that Smoke is dying because of something she did? And you couldn't be more wrong. It was the Blight's doing, Isia. If the Darkspawn hadn't awakened their old god, if the Archdemon hadn't come upon us, none of us would have ever have had to make the terrible choices that were forced on us in those dark days. Garahel always used to say that heroism was just another word for horror, maybe a worse one. A hero always feels that he has to do what's right. Sometimes that leads to tormenting himself with doubt long after the deed is done, or herself, the former mercenary added pointedly. "Your brother told me from the beginning that you were too cruel to yourself. I think he was right. There was nothing Isia could or wanted to say to that." Amadas agrees to her request and tells her to end Smoke's suffering and to make it look like she passed naturally. Isia turns to go, but Amadas calls out to her, asking for Isia to remove her coverings so she can see who she really is one last time. Isia does so, and Amadas is shocked at how she looks. Isia then leaves, hearing Amadas thank her as the door closes. She then finds Smoke in a cage, chained up and muzzled. She can see why her condition hurt Amatis so much. Isia leaves before dawn, carrying Smoke's and Croaky Tail's eggs in a sling across her chest. She has been able to take out all of their corruption as there was so little within them. She hardly even notices any effects on herself. She goes to Ravas, already having a place picked out to keep the eggs safe. She knows the Griffins are doomed without these eggs. But just because the beasts have died because of the Wardens doesn't mean she wants to take away that partnership. She knows of a few Griffin riders who have taken their joining early with their Griffins because they didn't want to live in a world without the beasts. And neither did she. She tucked Ravas's neck lightly. The feathers were smaller there and softer. In the Griffin's youth, they had been midnight black and sometimes shimmered with iridescence like the green on a mallard drake's head. Now they were gray in the softening night before dawn, and would be white in the sun, and felt worn and insubstantial under her fingers. Time and the blight had been kind to neither of them. But today they were here, together. Today they had one last flight. "Ravas," she whispered, "lift." Chapter 25. 942 Dragon. Caranel is shocked that there could be more Griffins in the world. Valya notes that she isn't sure that they're still there. It's been 400 years after all. Things could have gone wrong. Her, Caranel, Rymus, and Seika had ridden out to find the eggs because these are the people Valya can trust. Caranel questions why they shouldn't just ask the First Warden for help, but she answers that she doesn't trust them to put her Griffins over politics. Rymus asks what they plan to do with the eggs, and Valya isn't sure. They can't be set free as they will only be babies, and she isn't sure about giving them to the Wardens. Rymus tells her that one thing that is taught in the Templars is that in moments of doubt, always give people the opportunity to do good. A week later, the group finally reaches the Red Bride's grave. They climb into the cavern, finding only a mess of dead birds, with fresh footprints in the dust on the floor. Just then, shades and corpses attack. Rymus and Caranel take the leads while Valya is too shocked to move. She's cornered by a shade when Seika saves her. Eventually, an ash wraith attacks the group, almost killing Caranel, Rymus, and Valya. When it goes to attack Seika, instead of saving himself, he heals the others so that they could defeat it. The others are able to kill the ash wraith, but Seika is dead. The reality crashes hard on Valya, and while she wants to turn around to save the others, she doesn't want to make Seika's sacrifice meaningless. So they continue. It seems that they have defeated all of the demons and come across no others in the carved-out halls of the cavern. They pass by ancient paintings of Andraste and eventually find themselves in a chapel, a part of the cavern that matches what Isia describes. Valya finds a large carving of religious scenes and draws her magic, much like she did when finding the diary. Just like the last time, she finds just the smallest amount of lyrium still in the carvings and pulls from it. As she does, a small doorway is formed, letting the small group enter and find the eggs encased in a small dome. With trembling hands, Valya reached out to touch the sphere of magic. It vibrated under her fingers, warm and yielding as living flesh. A ripple ran across her palm, and then the globe lowered itself to the floor and opened like a flower, petals unfurling from the top down, layer after layer unfolding, dizzyingly complex, all opening so swiftly that Valya could not begin to follow the magic they contained. Here, an echo of a force field. There, a scintillating variation of a healing spell. Beyond them, a layer of raw mana to sustain the other spells. And then they were all gone. In the blink of an eye, before she can fathom what Isia had done, and the eggs lay unprotected before her, in stasis no more. She counts 13 eggs, and before them they begin to hatch. Caranel notes that he doesn't sense any corruption with them. They should be safe. They watch for hours as the eggs hatch, and Valya recognizes the one that has hatched first. It looks just like the descriptions of Croaky Tail. The others come out in shades of gray and black, 13 perfect little griffins. Rymus asks what they do with them, and Valya says that they take them home. Discussion. I want to talk about Lizmay for a moment. Like I mentioned in the last video, Lizmay is overdescribed and underused. And the last moments we have of Lizmay is them sacrificing everything they hold dear by joining Hunter to fight the Darkspawn, something Isia could never do. Yet they just die in an accident, and it's so unsatisfying. You just read about Lizmay screaming, and then they're gone. That's it. I'll be honest, in my mind, before I had read this book, again, I combined Lizmay with one of the blood mages that possessed part of the Griffins in the final battle and had turned into an abomination as they crashed down into the horde. I don't know why, but that just seems like it would have been a more satisfying end of Lizmay, sacrificing everything, even allowing to be possessed just to kill one more Darkspawn. I think this is just another example on how there's too many characters and a lot of roles should have been combined to one another. At one point, there is a mention of a champion of Kirkwall in the Exalted Age. This would be impossible, as when your hawk becomes a champion of Kirkwall, there is talk that they are the first one. The author would then go on to say that this was a mistake and should be the champion of Starkhaven. I left out a lot of the history of the Red Bride's grave because it didn't really matter much in the summary, but the TLDR is that someone made a giant statue of Andraste with water lilies on the side of a mountain because the people of the Neanderthals thought a plant growing in precious water was a miraculous idea. At some point, a dragon came to roost near the statue, and that's around when Isia hid the eggs there. Then the dragon left for reasons unknown, then came an order of monks that turned the mountain into their home, having carved the tunnels into works of art. Then, in the Blessed Age, the Darkspawn attack and somehow they all died, turning into demons. And then Caranel and his buddies come by the place and many wardens are killed by the demons that live there. The end. It should be noted that the Anderfels are known for a giant statue of Andraste, and while this place also has a giant statue of Andraste, this is not the statue that the Anderfels is famous for. Apparently this one came before that and might have inspired the other one. I'll be honest, I don't know much about tents, but the book mentions that Issy was able to knock on tent fabric. It didn't make much sound, but who knocks on tent fabric? Is that a thing? Why not call out who is inside? I'm just really putting this in here because I want to know if you can knock on a tent. So, I have a question about a scene in the book. One of the Grey Wardens complains that they can't fly out to Antiva and then fight, as that would be too much on the Griffins. Then Garahel responds by saying that they will be using joined Griffins. But on the day of the battle, only about 14 Griffins of the 50 are joined Griffins. So what about the others? Doesn't that Grey Warden's point still stand then? And if it doesn't, why even have that scene? Did they come from somewhere closer? Why not tell us if they did? And if they came from somewhere closer, why even have joined Griffins? If you wanted to have them, just to have them, then why not just say so? Why give an excuse? And if the distance did matter, then why didn't Ravas and Crookytail undergo the joining? Or did they, and no one told us about it? Ravas is getting really old, but she was able to fight and do all sorts of stuff. How was Ravas able to do all that? And then these fairly battle-ready Griffins had to be joined. There's this logic string here that doesn't make sense to me. There's a small note that Garahel had lost his helmet during the battle, which is actually a really fun little nod to a helmet that you can find in Dragon Age 2. And near the end here, there's a lot of subtext between Kaelin and Isia that I just don't get. I honestly feel like I'm missing something. Why was Isia upset when Kaelin offered to take the possessed Griffins to help her out? Why would she equate him to a demon? The scene of Isia and Kaelin at the end, Kaelin, this whole novel, has been serious and sullen, but then at one point when she asks for a private room, he then jokes that she wants to sleep with him, which is a lot. Granted, the blight is over, but it feels so different to what he was this entire time. He has also seemed to become more religious, which maybe speaks of how little Isia actually knew him, but I just don't get what the intention was. And then when they get to the private room, Isia wonders how many women he has taken to the private room, and she is surprised that he didn't actually lock the door behind them after she wants to leave. Why is that surprising? Why is this noteworthy? What am I missing here? I'm so confused. From Yasht, Isia kept saying that the taint couldn't have been transmitted between Griffins through sneezes and coughs, but they weren't just spraying mucus and salvia, they were spraying blood, which is how the taint is transmitted. What I find more interesting is that they are transmitted in echo of Isia's spell, so maybe a blood magic spell can be transmitted through blood too? I hope this wasn't just a plot device and they expand on it at some point, because now I'm curious. I don't want to ruin the moment of Griffins suddenly being back, but there are just 13 of them, and from the same clutch. I don't think that's a sustainable population. It's also never addressed anywhere, so it keeps nagging at me. So for the first point, it's a really good point about the blood. And second, so this is actually something that was brought up on the forum posts, and the author responded to. Per the author, it's not ideal, but it's certainly possible. It is easier to do with domesticated animals where humans can completely control the breeding decisions. The history of the Norwegian Lundhound was the basis for that particular idea. At one point, this rare and distinctive breed of working dogs was reduced to a mere 6 individuals, 5 of whom were siblings. Through careful breeding decisions, however, the Lundhound was saved as a breed. So that's an interesting story, but I also want to point out that this is a dog breed that is also famous for literally having 6 toes. While it could be possible to save this dog breed, remember that in the story there was at least one dog that was not siblings with the others. In the Griffins, literally all of the eggs come from the same parents. What I'm getting at is that while I don't think BioWare will pull out the promise of Griffins from us in the future, I think in realities, these suckers are getting like at least 7 toes, you know? From Anana, does the blood magic accelerate the taint or Isia just have bad luck? Does it mean if our warden was a blood mage, their odds are also bad? This, honestly, is the million-dollar question right here. The book seems to hint that this is because of the blood magic, but it also mentions that a warden's blight sickness gets worse during a blight, so perhaps it was a combination of those? There's also a mention of Isia's hopelessness affecting her, so it might even be a part of a person's mindset that takes them to their calling faster. So maybe it's just one of those, maybe it's all three, so I don't know. We really don't have any hard answers now. And finally, the characters. There is really only one more character to add using my rules, and that is Warden Dunsane, the Griffin Master, who is missing a few fingers from an encounter from a Griffin in his youth. I do want to note that there are a lot more named and described, but they never came back after one scene, so too bad. Now, one that is actually noteworthy is an Arlesian man that volunteered to go to the final battle, named Montfort. This would be an ancestor of Duke Prosper de Montfort from Mark of the Assassin. So now that we have a final list of all the characters, I hope you kind of get what I mean when there are just so many characters. And this isn't even all of them. These are just the quote-unquote important ones, and a lot of them, I've already forgotten who they are. A lot of them are just so unnoteworthy that we don't need them to be here, and they really could be combined with other wardens to make a much more streamlined and rememberable experience. But that's a story for another time. I also just want to show off some of the official art for the characters, and really by that, I mean there's only the 2 characters who have official art. Isia, shown in the Heroes of Dragon Age art, Garahel in the same style, and then the 2 of them together. There's also an official image of Garahel finishing the Blight. The novel. So, cover art. The cover of Last Fight features Grey Wardens on Griffins. I'm not sure what battle this is depicting or who exactly on the cover, as both writer and Griffin seem like no one I remember in the novel. The cover is fine, I think it's well drawn, but I do wish it had more meaning to the book, perhaps showing Isia or Garahel, or perhaps another important moment in the novel. As it is, I can't tell much about what this picture is of other than Grey Wardens on Griffins, which does look cool, but, you know, it's just Grey Wardens and Griffins. The book was released on September 16th, 2014, about 2 months before Dragon Age Inquisition came out. Amazon rates it as a 4.5 out of 5, which makes it the 2nd highest rated Dragon Age novel to date. As for my personal ranking, when I first read through the series, this was my least favorite by miles, and frankly, after a reread, I have to mostly stay by that claim. As I've mentioned, there are just so many characters to the point of absurdity. While having a lot of characters isn't really a bad aspect, and I'm sure there are a lot of novels with more, there are just so many characters that have no reason to be even mentioned. We could have used titles to get the same point across. We could have had some characters combined into each other for clarity's sake. At the end, there are so many who you know a lot about, but don't really need to, while there are characters like Sekka, who you don't really know enough about and whose deaths are just so hollow, and I don't care. I don't care about Sekka. I don't. Valya seemed to care about Sekka, but I don't care. That was a very pointless scene in my mind. He didn't need to die because I didn't care about him. I also really didn't like the flip-flop between past and present. While this could work in another novel, the stuff happening in the present just seemed meaningless. I think it would have worked so much better as a novel set in the 4th Blight, and then 1 or 2 chapters on Valya and friends finding the Griffins and describing how careful Isia was when trying to hide the eggs. It would have been much more of a thrill trying to figure out if the right person found the eggs, rather than having a few chapters every now and then to tell us that Valya is an okay person. Now, this is actually something that the author addressed on the BioWare social network. From the beginning, it was meant to mainly be a book about what happened during the 4th Blight. The frame narrative was added for 3 reasons. 1, because everybody already knows how the 4th Blight ended, so there wasn't a whole lot of suspense to the big outcome there. But adding a modern-day thread to the story opened more room for uncertainty. 2, because I was concerned that if it was purely a historical story with no clear relevance to the current state of the world, then we might lose a certain number of readers who wouldn't be interested without the hook. And 3, because adding the frame narrative allowed us to drop in a couple of small hints at what's going on with present-day wardens. So I would argue against some of these points, but you know how I feel at this stage. Also, while Isia has stated time and again that she is emotionally closed off and becomes even more so by the end, I still wish we had more character scenes in the novel. The relationship of Garahel and Isia, it's really sweet, but I'm still curious about the relationship of Isia and Caitlin. What were they to each other? And did they even know what they were? We know Amadis and Garahel were lovers, but it would have been nice to see more of Garahel being sweet to Amadis, like he was with Isia. Lismay was supposed to be friends with Isia, but we hardly see them interact. Even Ravos, who was supposed to be Isia's lifeline for a lot of the horror of the Blight, should have gotten more screen time. Other than their first meeting, you could replace Ravos with an object. There is sinfully too few characterizations for the Griffins themselves in this book. Now, I do want to give some credit where credit is due. I do really like the relationship dynamic of Isia and Garahel, and the characters that were set up could have been someone I really liked given the time. There are some side characters that I remember much more clearly than the characters that make it to the end of the novel. Also, the battle scenes were good, even if that really isn't my cup of tea. Something I also want to bring up, I think this novel was rushed. Per the author in the Bioware social network, I'm a sole writer. I can't do more than one book a year. I wrote Last Fight in the same year as one of my Pathfinder books, and it was brutal trying to hit both of those deadlines while also turning in half-decent work. I think it worked out okay for Last Fight because this was heavily inspired by real-life war memoirs and books like David Gremmel's Legend, so it was always supposed to be a stripped-down, taut narrative. But even with that, it was still tough, and most of the little things that bug me are tied to deadline constraints. With a more expansive, wider scope story, it would have been outright impossible. And I think this is a real shame. I would have really liked to see all that she had intended. Now, I don't think Last Flight is a bad book, and I know so many of you viewers have come out of the woodworks to say this is your favorite in the series, more so than any of the other novels. But I just think it's the weakest of this Dragon Age series. But I do think that speaks highly of the series of novels. If this is the weakest, then things are pretty damn good. Now, you've been listening to this whole series of videos, so you should know I'm not that great at literary analysis. So to finish this episode, and perhaps even series, I want to share this last bit of analysis sent by Essam over at the Food of Thetis blog. Also, because this is a very positive thing about the book, and I know I just sat here reaming it for like 20 minutes or whatever. So, Essam says, the author continues this cycle of contrasting scenes and character experiences of dread, fear, uncertainty, and exhaustion with follow-up scenes of discovery, awe, elation, and hope, but all mixed with a sense of hopelessness as the fight against the Blight. For Isia and Garahel, or status uncertainty for Valya, or the book itself, for us the readers, drags on. This novel is not the best story of the Dragon Age novels, but it is the most artfully told story. The very structure and dragging cycle-like parallel literary motifs in the novel throughout mirror the story, a story of seemingly unending battle of strife versus hope, of dread and fear versus certainty and strength. This is a story of sacrifices and the different kinds of sacrifices made in the name of preserving life. And furthermore, how there is no beginning, middle, end to real stories and legacies of sacrifice, but rather a patchwork of tales interconnected through their symbolism. And with that, thank you to everyone who submitted entries. And at this point, we have run out of Dragon Age novels to read. At this moment, there are no more on the horizon, so I can't even say for certain if this series will come back. But rest assured, if there is another Dragon Age novel, I will be back, and this will be back. So a huge thank you to everyone who has watched and enjoyed these videos, who's ever sent literally anything in, and I hope to see you again for another Book Emporium. Dara Sharal.